it makes its way to Cuba during the transatlantic slave trade with what's known in Cuba as the lupumi. Lupumi is like a creolized word of Yoruba. We're talking about the Yoruba people from Nigeria. But in the New World, they became, for some reason, lupumi. That's the name they became known as people in the other parts of the New World. In Brazil, you got the same tradition. In Trinidad, in the West, you got the same. In Haiti, Trinidad, in Brazil, you got the same tradition from the same people. In Brazil, they know this, the tradition is called Candomblé Nago. In the northeast of Brazil, Candomblé Nago refers to the Yoruba religions in Brazil, one of the Yoruba religions in Brazil. Then Candomblé Ketu is also another form of it in Brazil. Okay? So, that being said, now let's move into Brazil. We're going to play a rhythm called Ijexá. This rhythm is played ceremonially. Okay, it belongs to the deities Ogun and Oshun. Okay, and then it's above and beyond that. It's played for a lot of other orishas, and so you may hear this rhythm for other deities. Very popular. It's made its way out of the African religious community in Brazil and into Brazilian concert music, mainstream rock, Brazilian jazz, and this and that. But it begins in the Candomblé Ketu and Candomblé Nago traditions in Brazil. But Ijexá. And Ijexá is a group of people. It's a subgroup of Yoruba people in Nigeria. It's a place, and it's also a group of people known as Ijexá, pronounced just like that, Ijexá. So the next rhythm.
Like that too?
Yeah, so it's spelled I-J. So in Brazil it's spelled I-J-E-X-A. So the X makes like a shut sound in Portuguese. Ijexá. In Nigeria it's spelled I-J-E-S-H, or the S with a little dot underneath it. A, Ijexá. But it's the same sound, it's just spelled different, And it's also played in Cuba. They call it, it creolized differently in Cuba, so the word gets changed from Ijexá to Ijexá. But it's the same tradition, same people. A little history behind that. All right, y'all ready? All right, Ijexá, right?
Love it. Peace and blessings, family. First of all, before I say anything, I want to make sure, can we give these brothers another, I know this is kind of a bit, unorthodox to your standard, gathering, but sometimes it gets like that when you're trying to put great minds together. And how do I know we have great minds together? Because some of you guys are coming from, quite some ways. We got, sister coming from Texas. We got brothers and sisters coming from Georgia and Chicago, I believe. So we've got a lot of family up in here, which means one thing, that we heard the call and we answered. You understand? And the thing about, a small audience like we see here, the nature of that is, there's an old saying that most know not. You understand? Most aren't necessarily responsive to, something that invites them to ponder and reflect. This is a gathering of those who intend to ponder and reflect. You heard the call. The call was the gathering of Black intellect. So we responded to that call. It's a little rugged, you understand? Some hang-ups here and there. But as you see, we don't give up. We don't tap out. That's in our nature. So I want to go back to our brothers right here while we go on to this, continue on this show, and hopefully we'll be able to get to the point where we start breaking down some things. We got our sister Okochi right here. We got coming in town from Georgia. We've got Sister Elaina Porter. Of course, we've got Big Brother Major right over here. So we got some powerhouses up in the house right here. We got a lot of strong representation just right here. And we got our respected elder up in the front row. I'm going to pronounce it. Is she Chihuahua? Chihuahua. Okay. We got a respected elder Chihuahua right here. So we definitely want to give everybody, a warm welcome. Yes, indeed. Okay.
So, moving on. Again, that was a little something from Brazil. I think that's important so that we recognize that our history is 50 states, or 13 colonies in 50 states, and then it's a planet. And it's all 54-ish countries in Africa, but it's also Black history all throughout, the Americas, Central America, the West Indies, South America, and that goes into a lot of languages. It gets into French, right? Everybody saw they assassinated the president of Haiti not too long ago. Unfortunately, may he be elevated and blessed on the other side. But to talk about Haiti, you got to talk about French. French language that forces you to reckon with. And it talks about a lot about the American history, because without Haiti, we wouldn't have had half of our country. This country doubled in size because Napoleon had to raise money to fight all the wars. So he sells the Louisiana Purchase to Thomas Jefferson. That's what makes America go from 13 colonies to like the Midwest. Like, America doubles in size because Napoleon needed money to fight wars. He's fighting wars in Europe and he's fighting wars in Haiti, right? So, when you look at Black history, it's global, and it gets into a lot of other stuff in other languages, And so, Brazil is a big part of that. Probably close to 50% of all the Africans coming from Africa to the American continent went to Brazil. Yeah, went to Brazil, and as early as the 1500s. So you can't ignore that, and we should make sure our children are taking language classes and looking at that as a point of interest. Albeit colonial language, but that's a language too that has a lot of history in it, and it brings people together. Yes. Take them to Brazil? Yeah, that too. I speak Portuguese. I read it, write it, speak it, and Spanish. No problem. And it's a lot of history there that's unknown. Beautiful history and stories that just not to say, but it is correct. But it's called that. We're not. It's there, and so when kids are whatever school they're going to nowadays. You know, to learn Spanish, take Spanish, take French, take a foreign, take Dutch, because there's some history there with learning Dutch, with Namibia in Africa, or Suriname in South America, or Aruba, right? Aruba was a Dutch island. Curacao, Aruba, that's Dutch, you know? So that can only help your understanding of your own local community itself. You know, take these languages serious. You know, I think that's my personal opinion. That's where, to make African spirituality take it to the next level, you gotta embrace some language. Okay, and even if you don't want to deal with the colonial language, you don't want to speak English, or you don't want to speak French, the moment you get off the plane in Benin or in Lagos, in Nigeria or somewhere, or Dakar, and it's going to come a point in time where you're going to have to learn somebody's language, because they're going to say, in Cairo, you know, say dada ni, shalafia ni, in Cairo, you know, they're going to talk to you in a native language. You know what I'm saying? And so you're going to have to, and it's interesting because everybody wants, all of a sudden everybody's trying to move to Ghana. Right? Everybody want to move to Africa now, right? Which is okay. There's no problem with that. But learn, when you go there, the national language of Ghana is English, but they speak Twi, they speak Akan, they speak Ewe, they speak some Yoruba over there, they speak some traditional languages. You're gonna have to, you should deal with the language, because that'll help you grow in understanding Africa. You know what I'm saying? Right? So, you know, I think some of what we talked about here is important for that. You know, we're going to move into the Caribbean, into Puerto Rico, back to the Caribbean, because we started out in Cuba. We're going to go to Puerto Rico. Y'all see these drums? This is the bomba drum. Puerto Rico's most African music, the bongo drum. These drums, right, are made from barrels that during the colonial times, you know, okay, so let me go here. Depending on what side of whose plantation people fell on, and what part of the Americas plantation was at, the economy was different. Using Haiti, it was going to be a lot of sugar cane. Using Cuba, it's going to be a lot of sugar cane. Trinidad and Jamaica, it's going to be a lot of sugar cane, a lot of tobacco, coffee. In America, it's a lot of rice. It's a lot, not rice, it's a lot of cotton. And there's cotton down there too, but cotton wasn't the big dog. Sugar cane was the big dog, okay? Cotton was just another side thing they had, but cotton was king in America more so than sugar cane. These drums were made from barrels used to process sugar cane. So sometimes it would be a rice barrel, a flour barrel, but many times it was sugar cane barrels that contained sugar. And the sugar was used to make molasses. It was used to make rum. It was used to make just raw domino sugar, right? The powdered sugar. And it's used to make a type of syrup, like a medicinal syrup, okay? So these drums were originally made from those sugarcane barrels. And you can see the traditional style is to put these pegs in the side and hammer the pegs down, and that tunes it. Okay? They're called bomba drums. The lead drum's called a primo. This was called a buleador. And I'm gonna say this about Puerto Rico. You know, when you look at the media and look at TV, you may not realize there's a black history and a black culture in Puerto Rico, a place like that. People are like, what is this guy talking about? But truth be told, all your Hispanic baseball players, they started playing baseball in the Negro Leagues. So what did I tell you about Puerto Rico and Cuba, right? They played in the Negro Leagues. You had teams like the New York Cubans, Cuban Giants. There's a team, Puerto Rico, I forget, I think it's Stars or something like that. But they played in the Negro Leagues. So, you know, Jackie Robinson, he did a global. When he got into Major League Baseball, he opened the doors for people from other countries. And the other thing about Puerto Rico I want to say is the Harlem Renaissance itself, one of the pioneers of that is a black Puerto Rican named Arthur Schomburg. You know, some of you who hear this room know the name Arthur Schomburg. But he was a black Puerto Rican. And so Arthur Schomburg was told when he was a child in Puerto Rico that there was no black history. That's what his teacher told him in his childhood. He said there's no black history. And so Arthur Schomburg dedicated his life to research black history and prove that there is a black history, right? And that's why when he gets to New York, he's involved in the spearheading of the Harlem Renaissance. So he was one of those founding fathers. So we don't often talk about that in these circles, you know, but it needs to be mentioned. So now we're going to play some bongo music. We're going to play a lot of it. There's a lot of different rhythms. Play the bongo, drums, juba. We're going to play some different more variations of juba. We're going to play a rhythm called sika, a rhythm called oyomula, and a rhythm called kwembe. We'll play, you know, primarily those rhythms. But without further ado, bomba juba. This other Dubai we're gonna play is the Dubai from it's another version. Dubai is the one vocal rhythm that probably has the most variations. Okay? And as you see, the DNA, someone will say?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to run this the original way that we was going to do it. And then that next one right there will come back. First of all, I generally like to begin things with some type of supplication, some type of acknowledgement, of our originator, our ancestors, those that, come before us, those who, fought this fight before us, and, carried on the struggle, and all we are is just keep continuing on that story. Because I like to make sure that we acknowledge the proper source, you understand, for all of our abilities, all of our strengths, all of our successes, and even our failures, all of our challenges. I want to make sure that we acknowledge the proper source. So I want to say, first of all, by beginning in the name of the most wise, the most compassionate, the ever living, the one who's closer to each of us than our jugular veins, the most powerful, the most knowledgeable, I ask that, that the blessings from you, be upon each one of us there, each one of us here. And whether you acknowledge this powerful one as being you, within you, around you, above you, close to you, next to you, however you acknowledge this powerful one, this holy one, this divine one, I ask that you take in your mind for just a moment, take in your heart just for a moment, and give thanks, give gratitude that you were able to arrive here safe, that those loved ones that you may have left behind at home are safe, and that you have what you need of your provisions when you return to your home. So, with that said, I simply say, in the name of the compassionate, the merciful, I give all praise and glorification to the most merciful, and all praise and thanks be to the most merciful, who is the ultimate master, the ultimate sovereign of the finality. And it is this most merciful that I seek aid and help and petition for forgiveness, petition for strength, petition for wisdom. And it is this most merciful that I ask to keep me on a straight path, a path that doesn't incur unwanted wrath, unwanted anger, unwanted disparity, but the path that leads to favor, privilege, and ultimate success in this life and the hereafter. I mean, this time I would like to introduce our host, who's going to announce our first task at hand. This is Brother Umar Mukhtar. Please welcome him.
Peace to the family. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, family. At this time, we want to announce our sister. This sister here, Sister Elaina Porter, representative of Pinto Center for Human Rights and the Self-Determination and the Nation's Liberation Movement. Sister Porter, Elaina Porter, is the U.S. Criminal Justice and International Human Rights lawyer and instructor. In 2015, Sister Elaina Porter certified as a human rights defender. She partnered with organizations, unrecognized people, agencies, and grassroots organizations human rights in the United States. Sister Porter has developed a methodologies for protecting U.S. African descendants' rights to develop in the United States, use international law rights, human rights, refugees, decolonization, and humanitarian law. Sister Porter, she is today to educate us on how we can restore our basic human rights through the international courts. Let us all welcome Sister Elaina Porter. Peace.
Greetings, everyone. I'd like to make a correction. I am not an attorney. However, I am an international and human rights law expert as it applies to U.S. Afro-Descendants here in the United States. I have a background in criminal law, domestic law, and I went and did 2 to 5 years of study under 2 international and human rights attorneys that practice here in the United States. And we studied international human rights and humanitarian laws as it applies to U.S. Afro-Descendants. There were some things that were circumvented in 1865 concerning our rights and our political status. There were some things that were circumvented after World War II that relegated us to a simple minority when we are in fact indigenous to the United States. We were supposed to have been treated like Native Americans. We were supposed to have enjoyed that same status. But the United States government chose to perpetuate a lie that our existence began here in the United States, in the Americas, as the brother stated, in 1619. We were here many, many moons before 1619. And with that being said, we were supposed to enjoy collective rights that would have given us the opportunity to be self-sufficient, self-determining, to be able to develop. But instead, we are here today as a simple minority, like we swam beside the Mayflower, and we're treated a little bit differently than even immigrants. They get more respect than we do. So we're about to change that. In 2015, we began looking at some legal and political configurations that would better serve us so we could better utilize our resources here. We're not a poor people. We are basically an exploited people. We've been exploited economically, we're exploited with our resources, and we've been exploited politically. So today I'm going to give you some information that will empower you, that will empower your communities, and something that can be used today. In 2017, we declared an African descendant nation where we asserted all our rights from the ILO 169 agreements all the way up to Article 1 of the UN Charter, which says we have a right to self-determination, a right to control our resources, a right to decolonize our areas. So, I'll begin my presentation, and it's called Exercising Self-Determination in a Hostile State, Ethnic Conflict Resolution Using International and Human Rights Law. Overcoming the legacy of centuries of crimes against humanity, economic and political deprivation, exclusion, and ill treatment. The principle of self-determination of peoples in international and human rights law. The principle of self-determination of peoples are explicitly enshrined in the UN Charter, and it became legally entrenched by the UN General Assembly 1514 in 1960. The granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, the respective Article 1 of the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and Article 1 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights of 1966, the United States signed off on this treaty. However, they do have reservations, understandings, and declarations that makes it unjudicable in the U.S. court system. Therefore, they have circumvented our rights. The triadic structure of state sovereignty. The self-determination of peoples, human rights as elements of democratic governance can be found in the provisions concerning the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, the Declaration on the Principles of Friendly Relations and Cooperation among States in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations, annexed to the UN General Assembly, Resolution 2625 of 1970. And we're going to talk about the ethnic conflict. That's what we're in. We are in a state of war. We have been in a state of war since 1492 and before then, since we came in contact with these people. What we're experiencing is more than mere racism, more than one individual European settler person from European settler society that does not like us. We are victims of systemic and institutionalized internal and external violence and coercion, legally and politically. That's what's going on with us today. It's not little Ray Ray's mother's fault. It's not the person who we think is the lowest of our society. It's the United States government, the way that they have us penciled into their constitution, into their policies, and their legislations. Please don't allow anybody to tell you any different.
That's right.
They have lied to us. And they continue to lie to us to say that our issue is mere racism. You are a colonized people. You own and you control nothing. You cannot secure, protect, or defend your population. We are at risk of a flat-out genocide. That's where we are. Ethnic conflicts describes a situation in which two or more actors pursue incompatible, yet from their individual perspectives, entirely just goals. Ethnic conflicts are a form of group conflict in which one party interprets the conflict it causes and potential remedy along an actually existing or perceived discriminating ethnic divide. Sounds familiar? Stateless nations' modes of governance. Afro-Americans, a national minority group, has not achieved statehood. A state is an apparatus of governance, and a nation constitutes a cultural community. These are two very different kinds of human groupings. So naturally, we are a nation within the United States. When the United States and their predecessors, the settler governments, came and invaded Africa and invaded the Americas, our ancestors did not consent to the political relationship that they were in. Their sovereignty was displaced. And they never gave it up. We got the Gullah Wars right here to prove that. As the brother said at the beginning of this session, we have the Haitian Revolution to show that our ancestors never took what these people did to us laying down, and nor should we. Now, we're not able to find liberation at the barrel of a gun. That's the last resort. But we sure can use our ink pens to liberate ourselves, because we give away our consent to a parasitical relationship. Say that. Every single day you wake up and we're in the status of a simple minority. We're handing our future, our children's generational wealth down the drain, because we own and we control nothing. And we have international human rights law that says different. I want to talk about the Bandung Conference, because we need to have one too. During the 1960s, well, the 1950s, African and Asian nations, non-European people came together and said, you know what, after World War II, these people are crazy. If they think they're going to go, they tore up Europe, and they really think they're going to continue to exploit us and take our resources and rebuild? No, those African countries liberated themselves. They said, you know what, we're not going to continue with this parasitical relationship. They did something about it. And at that time, Malcolm X was trying to do something about it too, because they pulled his coattail when he went and visited those different countries. They pulled him and said, you know what, brother, y'all doing things the wrong way. This is what we're doing over here. And they killed Brother Malcolm for that, and they killed another brother by the name of, I think his name is Jose Pinto. I think he was from Kenya. The same week that Malcolm X was murdered, that brother was murdered as well. It was an inside job with the United States government and the United Nations. And I'm very clear that this is an international issue as well. Asians and Africans introduced core principles such as self-determination. They introduced mutual respect for sovereignty, non-aggression, and non-interference of internal affairs and equality. They wanted those Europeans out of their business. They wanted them to stop exploiting their resources, their human capital and labor as well. Africans and Asians moved the United Nations to a global declaration, not Europeans. A lot of people like to perpetuate the myth, oh, well, the Europeans control it. No. It was people who looked like us who got together and said, you know what? The buck stops here. Now, we can find liberation at the bottom of the barrel, or we can do it at the tip of the pea. But they chose both. They didn't take things laying down like Black Americans here in the United States. The results of the Bandung Conference serves as a model for the same procedures U.S. Afro-Descendants and other encapsulated peoples can use to get their problems solved. Now, we're not the only colonized people. We have the Puerto Ricans who were colonized. We have the people over in the Virgin Islands who were colonized, the Alaskan natives who were colonized that the United States exploits. We should have conversations with them, and we will be having conversations with them in the future, because those are internal trades that we can trade amongst each other. Right? But the first thing we have to do is get it together legally and politically, and we have to form a state, an apparatus that answers to us and us first. It don't matter whether you vote Democratic or Republican or Independent. Our lot has never changed since we've been able to vote. So we have to do something different. We have to form a government, a state that answers to us and answers to us first. The 1960 Declaration on the Right to Self-Determination for Encapsulated Peoples. Asians and Africans met and agreed upon the Bandung Principles, went to the United Nations and obtained the UN Declaration to the colonial countries and peoples. U.S. Afro-Descendants constitute an encapsulated people. An encapsulated people is when a settler government come in and set up their own institutions and constitutions, and without the consent of the people that they come and sit on top of, put them in their constitutions and relegate them to a disposable population. You see, that's what happened to us. We've been relegated to a surplus population that can be disposed of and extinguished at any time. That's what we are today. That's our political reality. The liberated Africans and Asians defined colonize and put in safety nets and measures to liberate colonized peoples. The UN created provisions to monitor colonized peoples of color. So those provisions still exist today. Those are some of the provisions that we can assert. The U.S. government illegal annexation of U.S. Afro-Descendants. During the Civil Rights era, the United States government, its puppet blacklist leadership, and international collaborators alleged that U.S. Afro-Descendants were now integrated citizens, and that was no need to record them on the non-self-governing list. Now, let me tell you about that non-self-governing list. After World War II, when the United States assisted in setting up the United Nations in San Francisco and then again in New York, the United States government signed a treaty with the UN stating that it would put all of its non-self-governing people on the non-self-governing list. Non-self-governing means colonized, people that were already here. And what that would have done it would have pulled us out of the jurisdiction of the United States into an international neutral jurisdiction that would allow us to decolonize to a certain degree, practice internal sovereignty and self-determination. But that was skirted because of the puppet misleadership, and our population was manipulated into going into forced assimilation. That's all integration was. There was no plebiscite vote. We did not agree to it, and I personally do not agree to it now. Okay? That's what happened to us. We can undo these things, but we have to know what happened before we can make the changes that we need to make. So, when the United States failed to put us on that non-self-governing list, as a result, our human capital has been absorbed and misappropriated. That meaning, instead of brothers getting jobs or whatever have we, they came up with the war on drugs where they can work our brothers for 33 cents per hour. And in the meantime, they found this great way to fight their war of attrition in Nicaragua by flooding our areas with crack cocaine in the 1980s, and then you come up 20 more years again and go over to Afghanistan and different areas like that and exploit those people and stop the Afghanistan people from growing their food and had them growing poppy plants to furnish the heroin trade over here. That's what happened. So if we gotta stop blaming the little race mama for some things that's way beyond their control, let's put the blame where the blame lies. During the civil rights era, the United States government, public black misleadership, and international collaborators alleged that U.S. Afro-Descendants were now integrated. We know that's not true. And we're going to move on to the U.S. government practiced racist apartheid customary law from 1865, 1960 to present. Customary law is when racism is the foundation of every practice, everything that the United States do is color-coded, and that's by design. It's in their constitution, it's in their legislation, it's in their programs, it's everywhere. U.S. Afro-Descendants did not have a plebiscite vote to address their political status or the political form. So the relationship that we have with the United States is forced and it's under duress. And we've been manipulated. And we can do something about it. And I'm going to move on and talk about how we can do something about it. Again, in 2017, we declared an African descendant nation where we asserted all of our international rights all the way up from the ILO 169 agreements that says, I self-identify as an Afro-descendant. That means my ancestors were here, mixed in with the Aboriginal people who were here, but I'm not giving up my Africanness. However, we do have a certain status that allows us to control our wealth, our resources, our human capital, and to self-govern. We can no longer depend on a hostile government who shows us every single day that they have no intentions of treating us right.
That's right.
I'm telling you, whether we like it or not, we have to look at reality. Today we're going to have a reality check. We cannot continue to perpetuate the lie that we're okay over here. We are not okay. If you think they're jabbing us now, you just wait. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? How are we going to stop this thing? We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. What's the plan? Do we have one? So what we did, once we declared that nation, we found out that, it's hard to get black people to come together politically. I mean, even under the rest, we can show all the pictures of the gloom and gloom and see the stuff on. Why can't we people get together? Why can't we unify? Well, we're not the same people because we were colonized in different areas by different colonizers. For example,
in Louisiana, we were colonized by the French. In my area in Georgia, all the way up to the Carolinas, we were colonized by the Spanish. That's how I know we're indigenous. It's all up in their military records. They know we kick, they know what. That's why they treat us that way. Because we went to war with these people over and over and over again. Our ancestors never gave up their sovereignty, and yes, I said it, sovereignty. We came from sovereign nations that were invaded. The slave trade was a war against black people of this planet. And these people never paid us reparations for it. And they owe us. I don't care who like it, they owe a debt, and they need to cough it up. Or they can hand that debt to their children. But I can tell you this generation right here is not playing. They're not going to continue to argue with these people. So we got to put something in place, legally and politically, to guarantee their survival.
So what we did was, we looked at political configurations and we decided that a confederation is the best political configuration for Afro-Descendants here in the United States because we are not the same. We came from different areas and we're oppressed by different people. That means we have adapted to different systems, different cultures. And we formulated ourselves into para-states. Non-traditional ways of governing ourselves. Some of us became part of the Nation of Islam. Some of us became part of the New Black Panthers. Some of us became Gullah Geechee. Some of us are Black Indians, and no, they are. Got the documented proof. Then some of us are mixed. But we can't get along. Some of us are part of those Black Europeans that brought those enslavers over here. Let's be real, Moors. Y'all drove them ships and brought them over here. Whether we like it or not. But at the end of the day, in their constitution, they don't care whether you're Moor, whether you're from New Black Panther, they don't care if you Jesus Christ. If you look like this, they will kill you.
That's right.
You're at the bottom of the barrel. The rug can be snatched from under you no matter where you are. So let us be very clear. They don't care who you call yourself to be. You're not safe here. So what we proposed was a confederated nation state. A confederation is a consocial government. One can find consocial governments globally. For example, one can characterize Switzerland as a consocial democracy since 1943, Belgium after World War I, Austria from 1945 to 1946, and the Netherlands from 1917 to 1967. Czechoslovakia was a consocial democracy from 1989, and this is the most recent and a very promising analogy that we can use. We can learn a lot from them. They were a consocial democracy from 1989 until its partition in 1993. Consocialism worked so well for them that it was no longer needed. We do not have to continue to vote for racist white nationalist parties. There's more to politics than voting for white nationalist parties such as the Democratic, Republican, or even the Liberal ticket. I'm not very impressed with them either. The United States government recognized over 300 consocial arrangements with various groups such like the Native Americans, Guam, the Hawaiian Eskimos, Puerto Rico, the Lumi tribe in Washington, D.C. That's an Indian tribe that actually tore up their treaty and told the United States that it's too old and we're going to get something else. And they are a free association nation. The Virgin Islands, the Federated State of Micronesia, the Republic of Palau, the Atolls, and the Republic of Marshall Islands. The U.S. Afro-Descendant Confederated National Liberation Movement had constitute our new power-sharing system and matriculation for U.S. Afro-Descendants. That means it don't matter what group you come from. Those rights still apply to you. We even have brothers and sisters who do not wish to even associate themselves with Africa because they are Aboriginal and they have the documented proof that it's their right. And those same rights apply to those brothers and sisters as well. The Pact, an internal compact, is signed to establish equality of opportunity, wealth, resources, security, peace, racial identity, and harmony. And that's the basis of a confederation. No matter whether we're looking at creating some type of security apparatus, it should be used in a confederated form so everyone can enjoy their autonomy and everybody can make their own rules. But when it's time to come together and cut this check, when it's time to come together to secure, defend, and stand up for our population, that is the best model for us.
That's right.
Because we have to realize that ethnically we are a distinct people. We're not the same people. We are a mixture of those Black Europeans, we're a mixture of those Aboriginal Paleo-Americans that are here, and those Africans that came across, the last wave of Africans that came across during the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we are a special population with a special set of rights. Our brothers and sisters in Latin America, they've already been utilizing those judicial personalities to secure their land rights, to secure their self-determination, to secure their autonomy. As a matter of fact, Brazil right now, they're going to be exercising self-determination, where they're going to force the Brazilian government to put an amendment in their constitution and legislation recognizing their right to self-determination. We can do the same thing. That's what we can demand of these politicians that knock on our doors and want our vote. We ask, what's your stance on self-determination? Are you willing to go up in the Congress and say, you know what? My people are entitled to reparations, and immediate reparations are not afforded in study. We want it now. According to international law, they're supposed to cut that check like yesterday. This is the type of politicians that we need. We don't need these buck dancers that we got rolling around here. You want to do something? You want to have vote? Get up there and see, you know what? A little bird told me in the Inter-American Court, you see, we can prove we done exhausted all remedy judicially. Because you got your constitution set up where it's in violation of certain international laws that violates our non-degradable law, which says we got a right to life. But don't they kill our people everywhere? Don't think they snatching babies? Native Americans, you can't snatch their babies, but you come get ours. We were supposed to have been treated like them. We fought beside them. But yet, we're a simple minority because you got buck dancing politicians knocking at your door who don't know international law, and they do, they're not utilizing it for years. Get them out of your face because we create our own government. If they're not talking about going up in the Congress, putting legislation on the table, not for a study, to cut the check. $59 trillion is the bill. Now you can cough it up in land, you can cough it up in whatever. You got some nice hardware for your military, give us 20% of that military, give us that land out there from the military. Come clean with our stuff. Now if these politicians are not talking along these lines, we have a right to tell them to kick rocks. And take that vote and turn it into a declaration in your own government. We're the only colonized people that sit idly by and do absolutely nothing. We are the laughing stock of the world. We got everything to protect and secure ourselves. We're the most intellectually capable people on the planet.
Yes, we are.
But we enjoy the quality of life of any third world country. And that's what we're going to hand to these youth if we don't do something now. So we need to hold these politicians accountable when they're knocking on our door asking for our vote. What you going to do for me? You going to go up and I need you to roll up in Congress and tell them to cut that check.
That's right.
Yes.
And I ain't talking about no stimulus check. I need some deeds and some titles to this land y'all done took. Oh yes, all up in those fee simple charters. I had one brother brought me a fee simple charter to 15 states that his ancestors had. All down in Louisiana, all down. We got land that belonged to us, but they took it. We're not poor. We're victims of one of the biggest thefts in human history. right.
And our leadership does absolutely, positively nothing.
Wonder why.
But showboat, kiss crack. Oh yeah, they kiss butt. Until they get on up in that White House, then they leave you behind. Talked about 40 years. I even had some Negroes was throwing up their hands celebrating for a $25,000 loan up in Illinois. You might make a damn payment on the house, but if you ain't got the job to make a note, what's gonna happen? You're gonna be outdoors next. That reparation, no, that's exploitation. And you got Negroes that co-sign on that. Stop voting in their elections. The United States go around the world watching everybody's election. Let's let somebody watch ours for a change. Instead of voting, let us make a declaration and have our own government. Let's form city councils and start having these self-determining conversations. If they can put a sanctuary charter in these governments, and you know these folks in Afghanistan trying to get up out of there. You know the first thing the United States is going to do is bring them where? Where they coming? And they going to get a sanctuary city just for them. But the rate rate them getting evicted every day. Getting kicked out every day. The water problem still ain't solved in Detroit. The taxes still high and people still are losing their property. But yet you seem to have resources to nonchalantly give to these other people who need help. We need help too. Matter of fact, you owe us cut a check. I'm just giving y'all something to think about. We don't have to stay in these conditions. We have laws, international laws, and yes, it supersedes domestic law, and anyone who says it does not, they are lying. If it did not supersede it, then why is the United States government out of Afghanistan? Why did they get out of Vietnam? Why? Because they had people that had enough sense to say, you know what? It's a higher authority than you. You see, other countries around the world don't go along with what the United States does to us. But they see we sit idly by and we do nothing. So guess what? They're not going to put their resources on the line when you sit by and you go along with it. It looks like we're okay over here because we're not asserting those human rights. We have to assert our human rights so we can secure, protect, and defend our nation, our people, our population, and better yet, our youth. And I'm not going to take too long because we have other speakers.
Take your time, sister.
Con socialism and power sharing. The power sharing that we need in our community is not just for the likes, not just for the donations. We're going to have to start taking responsibility. I mean, really taking responsibility for our communities, our homes, and our families. And that requires the Nation of Islam working with some Christians. That requires some people who are of the Hebrew faith working with some people who might want to practice a little voodoo. I ain't but we got to work together. Because we're all entitled to the same gratuity of self-determination. We're entitled to reparations. Restoration. Reparations is repair. Repairing the harm that's been done to us since slavery. There were international laws that were circumvented then. Our ancestors made it perfectly clear. There was a group of preachers in Georgia, in South Georgia, who told General Sherman, we want our own place. We think it'd be better we live amongst ourselves, even if we got to work and pay you for the land. They didn't want to be around these people. They wasn't fighting to be integrated. They wanted their own. So why is it that we continue to allow these puppet leaders to shove integration down our throats? That's your problem. You control nothing. You're penciled into their constitution as a minority. As a result, every nationality, Tom, Dick, Harriet, crippled, blind, crazy, get our resources. Touch it before we do. And our resources are stepped on 5 times before it gets to our community. Now we have another group that's coming. What do you think is going to happen to us? This is something we need to start thinking about and have these conversations about. And we got to unify and stop all the bickering. Meanwhile, we're arguing and somebody else is running off with the kid, with the cat, with the money, with the bag. For the past 500 years, they've been running off with the bag. They ran off with the bag in 1865. They ran off with the bag in 1945 and 1965, and they're running off with our bag right now. Because we got legislation on the table that Negroes celebrate for a 40-year study instead of cutting the check.
That's right, sister. Tell me.
How do we benefit from these wars that they have? We don't benefit from them. They done went over there and made millions off of heroin pumping it into our communities. All we got is the aftermath. Little Ray Ray's mama can't send to school because she on that stuff. But we blame her when we are the one who keep greasing this wheel. At some point, we're going to have some serious discussion. Now, we can't discuss everything out in public, but I can surely tell you, you got human rights, and we don't have to stay in a position that we're in. Right now, we're consenting to the genocide. And I want to talk a little bit about economic zones. Once we achieve self-determination, how it will look. In our areas, in our counties, where we're self-determining, and I'm looking at different areas and different counties where we're the majority population, we're going to control those areas. Now, I'm not saying we're going to be kicking nobody out, but we're going to be assuming jurisdiction over those areas. And we're going to control the economy in those areas. We're going to come up with development projects so we can put our people to work. We'll dictate the restorative justice policies. It brings me back to Rwanda. When Rwanda was after their genocide, when they were trying to build their countries, they did not use Western psychology. They used their own indigenous methods of healing their people. And look at Rwanda today. It's a blossoming economy, a blossoming nation. They cleaned it up, and they're trying to heal within themselves. They ain't worried about nobody else like us. See, they don't worry about fanfare. And these are some of the things that we can do. So I want to talk about self-determining economic zones. This cue go on there. Self-determining economic zones. Okay. And I'll go ahead and go over. Although U.S. Afro-Descendants have a low standard of living and lack political sophistication in the U.S., the consent of U.S. Afro-Descendants peoples would allow them to enjoy the highest standard of living. That means that we consent to going into nationhood and declare our right to self-determination, we could change the inequality and cover them and close those gaps within 5 to 10 years, because we'll be controlling our means of production. And we have a surplus economy that, where we're the majority population, we'll be the ones that control it. Despite the inherent encompasses such as underdevelopment and educational limitations and psychological trauma, U.S. Afro-Descendants circulate $1.3 trillion through this economy. $1.3 trillion. That's a lot of money that we're giving away. That's a lot of money. It's conceivable and possible to have a free association state for U.S. Afro-Descendants in which we will be able to transfer authority to ourselves so we can control our economy and govern ourselves. And that's what it's all about. I mean, you don't allow your enemy to control your household. That's just part of our trauma, I would say. The benefits of a confederated insular free association nation. The U.S. Afro-Descendant Confederated Tribal Nation State will be able to represent itself in certain UN sub-organizations and other regional organizations such as the OAS, the European Union, and the African Union. Also, we will be able and in a position to, to solicit different resources through other nations and through agencies like UNCTAD and the UNDP. I look at, coming through here, I'm looking at the infrastructure, I'm looking at the housing. I can tell gentrification is getting ready to go on around here. I was in Chicago last week, same thing. And these are our historical black areas.
Yes.
Do you know we can get $1 million a year for our areas? But no, we let the developers come in and get that $1 million a year because we ain't got sense enough to form no councils and assert our human rights. We got areas here where we're the majority population that's so old we can go to UNESCO and get that money too. But you can't do anything when you're not in the correct political configuration. The U.S. Afro-Descendant Confederated Tribal Nation will be able to enter the be able to enter into Pan-African trade agreements with African, Caribbean, and Asian Pacific nations. If we assert our rights as a colonized people, other nations have the right to assist. And I'm not talking about with bullets, I'm talking about with infrastructure. Because they've been through this thing before, they know how to develop areas. We don't, because we've been miseducated. We don't think that way. We think that our oppressors should be the one to dictate what goes on in our environment when that's not true. The U.S. Afro-Descendant Confederated Tribal Nation will attract foreign investment in the Americas and Africa with over $1 trillion economies ranging from land, cultural, biological property, engineering, agribusiness, and entertainment. Do you know hemp is getting ready to be the next cotton gin?
That's right.
What are we going to do? We're going to let that slide? We got so much land where we're the majority population, we need to be making some real decisions right now. If we get into this hemp business, within 5 to 10 years, we can close these wealth gaps. But right now, as a simple minority, and with the ignorance that's running around, we're going to hand ourselves and these children to the fever camps. That's where we're headed. Self-determining, autonomous, exclusive economic zones. We will control, exploit, and manage the resources, its inland and its nautical mile, exclusive, self-determining, autonomous economic zones. We got rights as indigenous people to and above the sea. Who like to fish more than us? I know I love me some seafood. Down in the south, all over in Texas and those areas, we should be harvesting our own seafood. That would be an internal economy for us. That's some of the things that we could be doing if we assert our rights. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea constitutes a sea zone that gives a state special rights regarding the exploration and the use of marine resources, including energy, production from water and wind. That means in these areas, like in Detroit, we could be asserting our rights and setting up business. Now I'm going to talk about the territorial approaches to ethnic conflict settlement. Governments that wish to accommodate, mobilize national, ethnic, linguistic, or religious communities have a range of institutional strategies at their disposal if they do not wish to permit succession. They may promote consociation, which accommodate plural communities through power sharing or centripetalism, which promotes group-based self-government, sometimes referred to as corporate or cultural autonomy.
Also, they may seek accommodation through territorial-based autonomy. Devolution refers to domestic measures of inter-ethnic accommodation. Generous devolutions, along with abundant opportunities for a regionally concentrated group outside its own regions. That means we have regional rights in the Americas, as the brother was stated in Brazil. They're asserting their land rights in Honduras. They're asserting their land rights. The Guarafata's not begging anybody for anything. They're asserting their rights. Those Maroons, they're not playing either. I cut my teeth. The first reparations case that I read was Saramacca versus Suriname. Look it up. They wasn't running around here asking nobody for no study. They told them, give it up. We want our stuff. Come clean. Federacy. When a nationality wants guaranteed autonomy, but there is no general desire among the dominant nationality for a federation, the state can establish a federacy. That is, it can enter into a bilateral arrangement in which secured autonomy is offered as part of the state only. And you can see an example of that with Quebec. That's one of the examples. The distinction between federacy and devolution. The key distinction between federacy and devolution is devolution is constitutionally guaranteed and cannot be revoked by the dominant society unilaterally. The primary distinction between federacy and federation is that the federation normally applies to a part of the state territory and normally a smart part in population, whereas federation involves statewide autonomy arrangements. So what that's stating is like in Quebec, they have their own state. We're 48 million strong. We're not going to fit in one state. I'm sorry, I don't want to live like that. And strategically, it would be suicide because those people don't like us. If I get y'all in one place, I can get rid of y'all. So we don't want to live like that. We want to keep it like it is and we just get authority transfers and we control. And we're not saying we don't want white people to stay there. We just want to be the administrators and we want to control what belongs to us. This is not about hating people.
Right.
And don't let people confuse this. Oh, you're preaching separatism. What? White people are the biggest separatists we ever want to. They separated themselves from us. They're the ones who put up those barriers, not us. When they invaded our ancestors' land. That was an act of war. And we have a right to not only defend ourselves, but protect our interests. We have economic interests that's being exploited right now as we speak. Human capital that's being exploited. Every black soldier that goes and fights for this country comes home to racism.
Yes.
Come home to watch somebody look like them being murdered in the street. As a nation, we can put a halt to that because we can say, you know what? Until you stop killing my brethren and your race soldiers stop killing my brethren, we're not going to fight not one more war for you. Good luck. You'll see more of Afghanistan's then. You see, we contribute to some things we need to stop. Why should we be going to fight wars with non-European people when our people are being murdered right here? This was the same question that was asked in the 60s, and here it is, 2021. We're still doing the same thing. We haven't learned anything yet. The primary distinction between federacy and federation is that a federation normally applies to part of the state's territory and normally a small part in population, whereas federation involves statewide autonomy arrangements. We need more than that. We need a government, and that government needs to represent us in every nook and cranny of the United States, and where we are the majority of the population, we need to be the administrators of the criminal restorative justice system. Our own healthcare system, our own school system, and our own policing.
are what you call, under the 4th Geneva Conventions, a special population. That means we're an oppressed group of people. We've had soft warfare. What's happening to us is hybrid warfare now, because they're having, through this social media, a big hybrid psychological warfare going on now. Where when you're a person who's standing up and talking about self-determination, you're made out to be crazy, cultish, and you are a separatist. That's what they're saying. But let me tell you, according to international law and the way other colonized people do it, they don't allow the oppressors to dictate how they handle their justice. You don't accept that. But we have, because of the oppression, we don't make very good decisions. And when we do have people who step up to the plate to make those decisions and to call those shortcomings of our leadership out, they're attacked. That has to stop. And it will stop when we become educated about our human rights. You see, your human rights are your God-given rights. Nobody can take those away.
Say that.
We have a right to life. That's the first right we have. We have a right to breathe. We have a right to life. And you have a right to secure, protect, and defend that life. That's right. Under Article 51 of the UN Charter, it says colonized people have a right to life, and you have a right to defend yourself. Under the 1960 Decolonization Conventions and the 1976 and 77 operative protocols of internal conflicts, because that's what we're in, we have a right to secure, protect, and defend ourselves. Why? Because you have an innate right to life that's a non-derogable right. And anybody who tells you that you don't, you send them kicking rocks and you sending them packing, because they are lying to you. And I'm not going to take too long. I want to go back and talk about politics, because Sister Cody, she's going to come up and she's going to talk a little bit about it. But I want to set the stage of how our next and upcoming election should look. We should see politicians asserting our international rights to self-determination. We should see politicians who are going to go to Congress and say, you know what, we want, not we would like, we're not asking, we're telling you, we want an amendment for immediate reparations, immediate authority transfers, immediate release of our political prisoners who don't even get a mention in Congress. Didn't say nothing. And we got political prisoners that have been rotting away since the 60s. Yep. But you got the Weather Underground, the white ones, who did 5 to 10 years. They got out and got the cushy jobs at Princeton, Harvard, and all the rest of them. Meanwhile, Mamiya and the rest of them are languishing away. And you know what? We got some slithering people who look just like us, that rolled back in the day, that still frolic with those socialists. They're not our friends either. Yes, I said it. We better wake up and smell the coffee, but yet, I can't get down with this new movement, because we did it this way. Well, if you did it so damn great, why we in the shape we in? I don't like the way this one roll right here. Well, if you got so much going for you on your side, then why is that murder still happening in your neck of the woods?
That's right, sister.
Look like you ain't had enough cheese with your white friends to me. The bottom line is we got to get out of the stupidity.
That's right.
And we got to check these people who are slithering around here in our faces saying, I represent the black people. Black power. Black lives matter. Well, if they really do matter, we need you up in that White House because we know we done exhausted our judicial remedy. We need you up in there telling them to cut us our check. Put an amendment on the table for immediate reparations, immediate release of political prisoners, immediate authority transfers. That means we dictate and control the curriculum in our schools where our children will know their true identity or who they are. They need to know that their ancestors, those Africans, those Maroons, took the United States to task from 1733 all the way up to 1858. They got enough bodies just the way they got them bodies in Vietnam. Our ancestors gave it to them first. But we allow these people to tell our children that their identity and point in history started at the lowest rung of society during enslavement. Our ancestors, not one of them was born a slave. They came from sovereign kingdoms, whether it was on the shores of Africa or right here. That was an act of war. And that war has never been stopped. Now, how do you stop this? Now, I'm not just saying we're going to go up in there and talk about we want no amendment. We need some other things too. Now, under the UN 160, I believe it's 160-47 reparations convention, we have a right to have guarantees of non-repetition. That means you stop doing what you're doing to us now. That means you stop. We have a right to have a treaty or a compact. Because if you don't have no treaty or compact, no agreement in place, this is going to continue. This was an international crime that occurred in 1492. It's an international crime that's occurring right now. And the United States government recognized treaties as part of this law. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is, when these politicians come up in your face, begging you for a vote, give them something to work for. And if the United States say no to our demands, that's what we want them to say, because we want to take you out of your comfort zone anyway. Because they've done a lot of nasty stuff to non-European people that they have not given an account for. Overthrowing governments, unleashing plagues in other governments in Guatemala. The same way they gave our ancestors syphilis, they did the same thing in Guatemala. So when we go to the table and take them internationally, we're going to have some backup. Now I'm not talking about at the bottom of the barrel. I'm talking about with the ink pen, you see. See, war, as Fred Hampton said, is politics with bloodshed. We know that's suicide over here. Okay? But politics is war without the bloodshed. You use this. And see, now there's a gaping hole. Now it's time for us to get in there and do what we need to do to free our people, free our children. We cannot allow them to continue to go on year after year after year after year with the same thing. And with that, I really appreciate you all, your time, your patience. Thank you, Brother Guadalupe, for inviting me here to speak. And with that, I'm going to yield the floor to Sister Elaina. Thank you.
What if I told you that I love you, my brother, no hatred? What if I told you that hell was something that we created? Praying to that white Jesus to take you out of slavery. I'm from New Orleans, baby. I seen a plantation. We want reparations.